Hello. This is part 4 in our Prophets and Tanakh lectures. Today's lecture will focus on the period of split between the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. So, to understand any of it, I want to take a step back and frame our conversation in what would a world that was perfected, repaired, made to be orderly under the rule of God look like? So take a minute and think to yourself, what is that world? Is it a world that is more just? Perhaps to you it's a world that the ethics of Judaism guide the way. Perhaps it's a world in which there's less pain and violence. Perhaps it's a world in which our perspectives have shifted. Perhaps maybe it's a world in which everyone believes in one God. Perhaps it's a world in which you have the things you need. Regardless of what it is, these are some of the answers that if the prophets were in the room with us, they might have given any of those answers. Because it's a question that fascinated and focused the prophets on their work. So, this is also the central question of the prayer, Aleinu Lishabeach. This closing prayer kind of comes in 3 big chunks. Chunk 1, it is on us to praise God for God's might, for miracles, big and small, for creation, and for Jewish peoplehood. And I would be a failed teacher if I didn't tell you that in the traditional text of the Aleinu, it says, thank you, God, for making us so much better than all the families of the earth. The way that we pray isn't about that, but the theme of peoplehood is certainly one of the things that it is our responsibility, it is on us, Aleinu, to praise God. But in return, God will make the world a better place for us. May we soon behold the glory of your might, sweeping away the false gods of the earth, that idolatry be utterly destroyed. Perfecting, repairing, ordering the world under the rule of God. That phrase, litakein olam b'malchut Shaddai, is the origin of the concept of tikkun olam, of course. So, turning all the wicked of the earth toward you. So, we praise God. God makes the world a better place for us. In other words, a better world is possible through partnership between us as humanity and God. Thus it has been said, Adonai will become the sovereign of all the earth. On that day, Adonai will become one, and God's name will be one. Echad ushmo echad. So that oneness, at least in part, refers to the partnership between God and humanity. So, our prayer theme is Aleinu. Our musar ethical value of the day is integrity. What is integrity? Well, I'm glad you asked. According to some secular dictionaries, the definition is something along the lines of a firm adherence to a code of especially moral or artistic values, an unimpaired condition, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, adherence to moral and ethical principles, soundness of moral character, honesty. So, it's placing your feet, planting yourself firm, and holding to your ideals, in other words. What about the Jewish answer? What is integrity? So, to start to understand integrity, we're going to take a trip to Proverbs. The integrity of the upright guides them. The deviousness of the treacherous leads them to ruin. Tumat Yeshorim. Yeshorim. So, Tumat Yesharim is translated as the integrity of the upright. On its own, Yashar Yud Shin Resh is translated both as upright and a person with integrity. From this verse, then, we understand that Tanakh defines integrity as the character trait of remaining upright, planting oneself firmly rooted for what you believe in, and remaining upright, remaining true to those principles. The opposite is deviousness. Deviousness, then, is a lack of firmness being easily turned around. So, Yashar is the word of the day. I want to show you a couple other places it comes up, including in Deuteronomy, do what is right and good in the sight of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. Ve'asita hayashar, that it may go well with you and that you may be able to possess the good land that your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, promised on oath to your fathers. So, okay, hayashar v'hatov, the upright, the integrity and the good. Similarly, for David had done what was pleasing to God and never turned throughout his life from all that had been commanded to him, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite, which you'll have to look up on your own. David had done what was pleasing to God. Asher asa David et hayashar. Not what was pleasing be'enei Adonai, in the eyes of God, but what was upright, what was morally had integrity. So integrity, we learn here, is, again, there's a moral judgment to it, but it's not necessarily about like good or bad, has universal truth to it. Hayashar, the upright, is related to be'enei Adonai, in the eyes of God. So it has a judgment quality to it. Finally, just to show where you might know this phrase from, Or zarua la tzadik ul yishrei lev simcha, light is sown for the righteous, radiance for the upright. Yishrei lev, so here it's being translated as the upright. And I also want to point out that this is one of many places that tzaddik, the righteous, the just, is tied with the upright. So, now that we have covered the prayer Aleinu and the idea of aspiration and being in partnership with God to create a better world, a more perfect world under the rule of God, and we have dealt with the idea that integrity, yashar, is so intimately connected to being firm to one's beliefs, convictions, values towards a more righteous world. Now we can deal with the prophets. So as we deal with some of these prophets in their historical context, I want to just give a heads up that we are going to go into a time of empire. In the book of Joshua, in the book of Judges, in the books of Kings and Samuel, we're dealing with a bunch of different tribes, essentially, and they're infighting. But now we start to deal with foreign empires coming into the picture. So to talk about imperial rule, I'm going to give you post-colonialism extremely light. Identity is key. Lots of scholars have thought about what are the values, the phrases that we can use to think about identity. And there are three that I want to point out. One is ambivalence, conflict shaped by the desire to be the ruler, yet the repulsiveness of domination. Everybody wants to rule the world. No, but genuinely, everyone wants to rule the world, but also hates being ruled over. So, ambivalence. Hybridity, this is very important. Cultures are mixtures, not discrete entities, and while the self and the other are not disjointed, They're rather interrelated. So pay attention. How is the hybridity created when you see imperial domination? And how are cultures, how do they push back on that? Similarly, mimicry. The colonized do not simply imitate the change culture of the conquering power, since both the colonizer and the colonized become interdependent and reflect the mutual and interrelated construction of identities. So when the Assyrians arrive in Israel and in Judah, how do the Judahites take on Assyrian traits? How do the Assyrians take on Jewish traits? Finally, I want to just remind us that we can always think about what is said in text versus what is actually communicated. So there's a concept of a public transcript, the thing that anyone would understand on the surface level by reading a text about empire in particular, because imperial control depends on ideological control wielded through discourse. This creates space for ideological resistance, and in many ways, the Hebrew Bible is a text of ideological resistance to empire, and specifically to the empires that are dominating over Israel and Judah. So, pay attention to what are the hidden transcripts. Expressions of feigned support for imperial superiority are the kind of the public surface level, and then underneath is a hidden message that's really resistance. So, it's like saying, sure, yeah, I love your beautiful castles and palaces that are so extravagant and cost millions upon millions of dollars to build. Clearly, you can tell how I feel about the castle. The hidden transcripts are like that, so paying attention to those will be important to us. So, some geography for you. This is Israel. As you can see, on this map, it's sorted into a number of kingdoms. I don't care about any of this or this. I care about Jerusalem right here in the kingdom of Judah, and then Bethel, Shechem, and the kingdom of Israel. So, when you look at this map, what do you notice? You notice that Israel is so much larger than the kingdom of Judah. That is correct. How is that? Why is that? Keep it in mind. So, some history. King Solomon, he loved many, many, many foreign women in addition to Pharaoh's daughter. Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Phoenician, and Hittite women, from the women that God had said to the Israelites, none of you shall join them, and none of them shall join you, lest they turn your heart away to follow their gods. Such women Solomon clung to and loved. He had 700 royal wives and 300 concubines, and his wives turned his heart away. 700 royal wives and 300 concubines. I mean, 1,000 women. That's in his old age, and he was an old man. His wives turned away Solomon's heart after other gods, and he was not as wholeheartedly devoted to the eternal his God as his father David had been. So, Solomon built a shrine for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the hill near Jerusalem, and one for Molech, the abomination of the Ammonites. Okay, side note, Molech, really, 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 really bad. We hear several places in Torah, don't sacrifice your children to Molech, because apparently Molech liked child sacrifice. Molech is like the bad of the bad in terms of worshiping foreign gods. So things aren't good for Solomon. And he did the same for all of his foreign wives who offered in sacrifice to their gods. God was angry with Solomon because his heart turned away from the eternal, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. When God does something twice, you're in trouble. And had commanded him about this matter not to follow other gods. He did not obey what God had commanded him. And God said to Solomon, because you are guilty of this, you will have not kept my covenant and the laws that I enjoined upon you. I will tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your servants. But because I loved your father David, I will not do it in your lifetime. I will tear it away from you, from your son. So, he continues, however, I will not tear away the whole kingdom. I will give your son one tribe for the sake of my servant David. Not because you've done anything right, Solomon, because you really messed up. All of it doesn't matter when you worship foreign gods. And for the sake of Jerusalem, the city I have chosen. So, raise your hand if you've heard of the 11 lost tribes. You have. So, that, my friends, let's do some math. So, Asher, Naphtali, that's 2. Zebulun, Issachar, Manasseh, that's 5. I'm going to switch hands. Reuben, Gad, Reuben, Gad, Ephraim, Dan, and Shimeon. That is 10 tribes, folks. Count them, 10. So, why do we talk about 11 lost tribes? Keep in mind, on this map of the territories, the Levites do not have a territorial possession. For their job was temple service, and they lived among the people. So the tribe of the Levites weren't lost. And then the tribe of Benjamin kind of becomes split. Some sticks with the Judites, and some go elsewhere. So, let's see what's about to happen. All right, so it's big coronation day now with Rehoboam, who went to Shechem, for all of Israel to come to Shechem to acclaim him as king. But little did he then know, Jeroboam, son of Nebat, learned of it while he was still in Egypt, for Jeroboam had fled from King Solomon and had settled in Egypt. They sent for him, and Jeroboam and all the assembly of Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam as follows. Your father made our yoke heavy. Now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke that your father laid on us, and we will serve you. He answered them, go away from me for 3 days, then come back to me, and I'll give you my decision. So they went away. King Rehoboam took counsel with the elders who had served his father Solomon during his lifetime. They said, what answer do you advise me to give to this people? They answered him, if you will be a servant to those people today and serve them, and if you respond to them with any kind words, they will be your servants always. But he ignored the advice he was given and took counsel with people his own age, shall we say, with the young men. And they basically said to him that you should actually respond harsher. Say to them, my little finger is thicker than my father's loins, so I will be that much stronger. And he takes advice from those people. Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam on the 3rd day. The king answered the people harshly, ignoring the advice that the elders had given him. He spoke to them in accordance with the advice of the young men and said, my father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father flogged you with whips, but I will flog you with scorpions. Pleasant. So, of course, King Rehoboam, who sent Adoram, who was in charge of forced labor, but all of Israel pelted him to death with stones. Thereupon, Rehoboam hurriedly mounted his chariot and fled to Jerusalem. Thus Israel revolted against the house of David, as is still the case when this was written. It's not still the case. When all Israel heard that Jeroboam had returned, they sent messengers and summoned him to the assembly and made him king over all of Israel. Only the tribe of Judah remained loyal to the house of David. On his return to Jerusalem, Rehoboam mustered all the house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. See, Judah plus the tribe of Benjamin. 180,000 of the best warriors to fight against the house of Israel in order to restore the kingship to Rehoboam, son of Solomon. It doesn't work. There was shelter and battle and yada, yada, yada. But here's the here's the thing that really does it in for the people of Israel. The king took counsel and made 2 golden calves. That's correct. And said to the people, you have been going up to Jerusalem long enough. This is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. He set up one in Bethel, which, by the way, Beit El, house of God, and the other in Dan. This proved to be a cause of guilt, for the people went to worship the calf at Bethel and the one at Dan. Okay, golden calf worship, probably as bad, if not worse, than sacrificing to Molech. So things are not good. So we need some prophets. The first empire we're going to talk about is the Neo-Assyrian Empire, as they're referred to by historians, commonly referred to as the Assyrians in Tanakh. So, Neo-Assyrian Empire 101, most basic level, things you need to know. 880 to 600 before the Common Era. A heterogeneous and multinational power directed by an autocratic king who is conceived of as superhuman representation of God on earth. Kings were not divinely appointed. Kings were as equal to gods. Important kings include Sargon and Sennacherib. Legitimized rule with cultural superiority, xenophobic views of non-Assyrians, and divine charge to grow empire, relied on tactics of terror and conquest to maintain control through psychology of fear. So that meant that their strategy was generally to annihilate, force everyone to go and separate and never come back, hence lost tribes. So, what happened? Meet Isaiah. When I say Isaiah, you're probably thinking, wait, which Isaiah are you talking about? There are 3 Isaiahs. The book of Isaiah is about 60 chapters. The first 39 of them are called Proto-Isaiah, the original Isaiah. There is then Deutero-Isaiah and Trito-Isaiah, who speak to the people of Israel during and after Babylonian exile. But Proto-Isaiah begins in 740 before the Common Era and contains prophecies about Judah and Jerusalem, about the fall of the kingdom of Israel, and much, much more. So you can read the whole book on your own time, but I'm going to give you some highlights. So, Isaiah's prophetic style, I often say, is one of collective integrity and consolation. So, I will just show you some examples of what he tries to do. This is from Isaiah 1. For God has spoken, I reared children and brought them up, and they've rebelled against me. An ox knows its owner, a donkey its master's crib. Israel does not know, my people takes no thought. Ah, sinful nation, people laden with iniquity, brood of evildoers, depraved children, they have forsaken God. So, angry on one hand, yet, what need have I of all your sacrifices, says God? I am sated with burnt offerings of rams and suet of fatlings and blood of bulls. Good alliteration. I have no delight in lambs and he-goats. That you come and appear before me, who asked that of you? Trample my courts no more, bringing oblations is futile, incense is offensive to me, new moon and Sabbath, proclaiming of solemnities, assemblies with iniquity. I cannot abide. Your new moons and fixed seasons fill me with loathing. They are become a burden to me. I cannot endure them. And when you lift up your hands, though I will turn my eyes away from you. Though you pray at length, I will not listen. Your hands are stained with crime. Wash yourself clean. Put your evil doings away from my sight. So already one of Isaiah's common themes is ritual without sincerity, without it matching your ethical living, means nothing. And this is a great example of that, as is Deutero-Isaiah's famous "Is this the fast you desire?" speech on that we read on Yom Kippur. He continues with a vision in chapter 2. The mount of God's house shall stand firm above the mountains and tower above the hills, and all the nations shall gaze on it with joy. And many people shall go and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of God, to the house of God of Jacob, that we may be instructed in God's ways and may walk in God's path." For instruction, Torah, shall come forth from Zion, the word of God from Jerusalem. Bonus points to anyone can tell me where that comes in the service. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah u'devar Adonai meYerushalayim. There you go. Correct. Thus God will judge among the nations and arbitrate for the many people, and they shall bear their swords into plowshares beat, and their spears into pruning hooks. The nation shall not take up sword against nation. They shall never again know war. So I point this out because he goes immediately from that chapter 1 harsh, what's going on? You all need to have integrity. If you're all worshiping for these things, then you have to live them. It's harsh. It's about the collective. And then he goes to consolation. If you all do this, good things are going to come. God's house, the temple will stand firm. The Torah will come continually from Zion and Jerusalem, and wars won't happen anymore. Cool beans. Now, he continues in consolation with a couple other important visions worth noting. This one here comes from chapter 6 and also is probably familiar to you all from the liturgy. In the year that King Uzziah died, I beheld my sovereign seated on a high and lofty throne, and the skirts of God's robe filled the temple. Seraphim, scary angels with eyes and wings, stood in attendance, each with 6 wings, 2 covering the face for humility, 2 covering the body for humility, and 2 to fly with. And one would call to the other, "Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh, Adonai Tzevaot, Melocho haaretz kevodo." Holy, holy, holy God of hosts, whose presence fills all the earth. The doorposts would shake at the sound of one who called, and the house kept filling with smoke. I cried, "Woe is me, I am lost. For I am a man of impure lips, and I live among a people of impure lips." In other words, collective integrity. I do not have integrity because the people I live with do not have integrity. The people around me don't act according to the mitzvot, so I'm also in trouble. Yet my own eyes beheld the sovereign God of hosts. Then one of the seraphim, who had taken a live coal from the altar with a pair of tongs, flew over to me, touched it to my lips, and declared, "Now that this has touched your lips, your guilt shall depart and your sin be purged away." So in other words, consolation. You all collectively have failed at having integrity, but there's always a chance for teshuvah, to return to the right path. Similarly, I want to point out some of the colonial tones that come up in here, including this vision from chapter 8. Assuredly the sovereign will bring them up against the mighty massive waters of the Euphrates. King of Assyria and all his multitude, it shall rise above all its channels and flow over all its beds and swirl through Judah like a flash flood, reaching up to the neck. Okay, Assyria is powerful, could be dangerous, but with us is God, whose wings are spread as wide as your land is broad. Band together, O peoples, you shall be broken. Listen to this. You remotest parts of the earth, gird yourselves, shall be broken. Gird yourselves, you shall be broken. Hatch a plot, it shall fail. It shall not succeed, for with us is God. So, God as imperial, as strength against empire, as preserving one's identity, as the Assyrians are not just an attack on the people who live in the land, but are an attack on the identity of Judahites and on the God of Judah. All right, so there's Isaiah. The next prophet I want us to look at for a moment is Jonah. Jonah, who speaks to the Neo-Assyrians in Nineveh. The word of God came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go at once to Nineveh, that great city, capital of Neo-Assyria, and proclaim judgment upon it, for their wickedness had come before me. As you all know, Jonah runs away to Tarshish, gets thrown overboard. There's that whole whale incident. Not good. Whale, actually, it was a big fish, but what can you do? Finally goes to Nineveh, and then eventually whines at God. So, I want to start by looking at what happens when Jonah actually gets, oh, what did I do? Oh, no? What did I? Ooh. Oh. Well, so we're going to find out in a moment what's going to happen to Jonah in that great city of Nineveh in chapter 3 of the book of Jonah. Ah, there we go. Ha-ha! So, chapter 3 on this side of your screen. The word of God came to Jonah a second time. Go at once to Nineveh and proclaim what I tell you to. He got there. Nineveh was an enormously large city, 3 days walk across. Okay, stop there. What does that line tell you about the view of the Assyrians? 3 days, that's a big city. They're saying, wow, the Assyrians have so much wealth, that they have such a huge city. So it's already a hidden transcript of a critique of the wealth of the king and the greediness, the greed of the king and the Neo-Assyrian people. Jonah started out, made his way 1 day's walk, proclaimed, 40 days more and Nineveh shall be overthrown. The people believed God. They fasted. Great and small alike put on sackcloth. When the news reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from his throne, took off his robe, sackcloth, ashes, etc. By decree of king and nobles, no human or animal or flock or herd shall taste anything. They shall not graze, they shall not drink water, they shall be covered in sackcloth, human and animal. Everyone shall cry mightily to God. Let everyone turn back from their evil ways and from the injustice of which they are guilty. Who knows but that God may turn and relent? God may turn back from wrathfulness so that we do not perish. God saw what they did and how they were turning back from their evil ways and canceled the punishment that had been planned for them and did not carry it out. So, I like to think about a couple things there. On one hand, in following our hidden transcript study, what is Jonah saying about the Neo-Assyrian people? Here he's saying that, well, maybe he's saying that they don't have integrity, that they just turn back. Okay. Maybe it's that their ways are so wrong. We're taught, we'll read in chapter 4 that they don't know their left from their right, God says. So maybe it's that any direction is better than the direction they're going. Or that they know how badly they need the God of Israel. I also want to think about efficacy versus perspective versus integrity for a moment. That is to say, Jonah was incredibly effective. If you take the text at surface level, saying that, wow, he talked to them and all the people just turned back. That's cool. Except I push on it and say, whose perspective is that from? Is this Jonah's perspective? Is it that Jonah felt that they turned back and just wanted to be done? And maybe they said, okay, sure, yeah, man. And then went back to whatever they were doing. And I think that that's all tied to integrity. That is to say, what is it that you believe in? And how do you know that you've accomplished that? How do you know that the goals that you have set, the things that you have said are right, that you are rooted firmly in, are accomplished? When you have integrity, you know that the people declaring that they're turning back, maybe isn't enough. Maybe for you, you need to see the action, and that, to you, is part of your commitment to your values. Maybe it's that you need to actually see that they're not just going to say the words, but they're going to live their lives according to the values and meets the vote of God. Whatever it may be, I think that efficacy, perspective, and integrity all go together in the story of Jonah to teach us the dangers and problems of the Neo-Assyrians and the importance of maintaining our integrity when things are tough. Similarly, the end of the book of Jonah. Jonah gets a gourd. It's great, and then God kills it. Then God said to Jonah, "Are you so deeply grieved about the plant?" "Yes," he replied, "so deeply that I want to die." Then God said, "You cared about the plant which you did not work for and which you did not grow, which appeared overnight and perished overnight. And should I not care about Nineveh, that great city in which there are more than 120,000 persons who do not yet know their right hand from their left, and many beasts as well?" So, again, integrity. Jonah has none. Also, though, worth noting that chapter 11, or verse 11 here is about the integrity of God. It's about God saying that I care about all people. My integrity is that I sent you to go to deal with 20,000 persons who do not know their right hand from their left. And many animals. Again, public transcript, wow. Nineveh is so great. They've got 20,000 persons, and they can learn. Hidden transcript, do not know their right hand from their left. Big critique. God has integrity. The people do not. God is compassionate. There you go. So, that is Jonah. Now, we turn to a prophet who is not technically in the curriculum, but who I would be amiss to not talk about. And should you be watching this because you're planning on teaching Sunday school, I encourage you to throw in a little bit of Hosea, because why not? Hosea, Israel's fall is coming. Not autumn, but fall. Hosea is the only prophet in Tanakh who is actually told that he is from the northern kingdom and he prophesizes to the northern kingdom. No one else is from there. No one else really talks to them. They just talk about them. God and Israel should be partners like spouses. The people abandoned God, so God would abandon them. There was still hope to turn back, but not a lot of hope. Anxiety about hybridity and losing identity. Hosea's main premise is that the people have lost their integrity, have lost their firmness to their values, so God doesn't care about them anymore, and they're going to lose their entire sense of self because they're losing God. It's all consequences for actions. Actions have consequences, doom and gloom with Hosea. When God first spoke to Hosea, God said, "Hosea, go, get yourself a wife of whoredom and the children of whoredom, for the land will stray from following God." Okay, good start, right? She conceived again and bore a daughter. He was told, "Name her Lo Ruhamah, for I will no longer accept the house of Israel or pardon them, but I will accept the house of Judah." So Lo Ruhamah means no pity, no compassion. Same root as Racham, like Rachamim. But I will, and I will give them victory. Yeah. After weaning Lo Ruhamah, she conceived and bore a son. Then God said, "Name him Lo Ami, not my people. For you will not be my people, and I will not be your God." Lo Ami, not my God, not my people. And then chapter 2 is the kind of one vision of hope that Hosea gives us. "Oh, call your brothers my people and your sisters lovingly accepted. Remonstrate your mother, demonstrate her, for she is not my wife, and I am not her husband. and let her put away her whoredom from her face and her adultery from between her breasts. Else I will strip her naked and leave her as on the day she was born. I will make her like a wilderness, render her like desert land, and let her die of thirst. I will also disown her children, for they are now a whore's brood, and that their mother has played the whore, and she conceived them and has acted shamelessly, because she thought, I will go after my lovers, who supply my bread and my water, my wool and my linen. So, there's a vision. Okay, they could be lovingly accepted. God always is ready to return them. But they become reliant on the bread and water and wool and linen, all the luxuries that they think that they're going to get from the Assyrians and from their golden calf and from everywhere they turn away from God. So God's going to disown him. Actions have consequences when your actions don't have integrity. I also want to, in chapter 2, we also get a little more hope here. In that day, I will make a covenant with the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the creeping things of the ground. That's talking bad about the people of Israel. They're like beasts of the field and birds and creeping things. I will banish bow, sword, and war from the land. Thus I will let them lie down in safety, and I will espouse you forever. I will espouse you with righteousness and justice, with goodness and mercy, and I will espouse you with faithfulness. Then you will be devoted to God. Piece of Jewish trivia for you today. These I will espouse you verses. Anyone know what Jewish ritual item you might be putting on if you're reciting those verses? Tefillin! That is correct. When you wrap the thread, the strap of the arm to fill it around the finger, you say those verses traditionally. I will sovereign the land as my own. Lo ruchama. I will take lo ruchama back in favor, and I will say to lo ami, you are my people, and you will say, you are my God. So again, vision of hope, even with the doom and the gloom. I also want to go to chapter 8. Put a ram's horn, a shofar, to your mouth, like an eagle over the house of God, because they've transgressed my covenant and been faithless to my teaching. Israel cries out to me, oh my God! We are devoted to you. Israel rejects what is good. An enemy shall pursue him. They have made kings, but not with my sanctions. They have made officers, but not of my choice. Of their silver and gold, they have made themselves images to their own undoing. I reject your calf, Samaria. I am furious with them. Will they never be capable of purity? Was it Israel's doing? It was only made by a joiner, not by a god. No, the calf of Samaria shall be reduced to splinters. So again, your fault. God's going to turn away from you because you built a golden calf, 2 golden calves. When you do something twice, that's when you get in trouble. Ask Moses. All right, back to our history lesson. Israel falls to the Neo-Assyrians. The people are dispersed, 10 lost tribes. So what will happen in Judah? The Neo-Assyrians arrive there too. Whoa. Excuse me. So what will end up happening is the kingdom of Israel, defeated, deported. The southern kingdom of Judah will remain, and they will end up essentially saying, look, leave us alone, we'll pay you money. But first, we will turn to righteous King Hezekiah and Josiah. These 2 righteous kings around this time are cited as the reason that Judah maintains its independence because, if we think about it through our colonial lens and the idea of why identity is important, these kings helped Israel to maintain and retain their identity, both through religious reforms. Hezekiah, we're going to talk about in a moment. Josiah comes a little later, and his story is essentially, he mysteriously discovers a scroll. Some scholars and people think it's Deuteronomy. A lot of scholars say, no way it's actually Deuteronomy, but sure, go for it. But finds a scroll. He goes to the prophet Huldah, who says to the priests that, hey, y'all haven't obeyed the instructions in the scroll. If you found a mysterious scroll and it tells you to remember you've got one God and to live by the commandments, you should probably do it. So then they go ahead and he reads it to everyone, and they all stand and solemnize the commandment before God. They follow and observe them, and that helps to save the people of Judah. So again, giving identity, creating integrity. So, chapters 36 through 39 of Isaiah, the end of Proto-Isaiah, deals with the Assyrians arriving in Judah and essentially them being kicked out of Judah to our agreement of them only paying money. King Hezekiah is in this section as well. Sorry, it's kind of a wall of text, but I want to point out that this is a conversation with the Rabshakeh, who is the assistant to the king. And he said to them, "You tell Hezekiah, thus said the great king, the king of Assyria, what makes you so confident? I suppose mere talk makes counsel and valor for war." Anyway, they have this whole conversation about how you're all going down. And the people say, or he says rather, to the Israelite, or to the Judahites, "And if you tell me that you are relying on the eternal, your God, this is the very one whose shrines and altars Hezekiah did away with, telling Judah and Jerusalem, you must only worship at this altar." Wait to spin news. So what happened was, part of Hezekiah's reform to kind of keep the people true to their ideals, to their identities, is to say, having all these kind of outposts of the temple where you can go worship in any city isn't working for us because it's leading people to add false gods to these sites. It's leading to statues of Baal and Asherah and golden calves and whatever. So he said, nope, we're closing them all down and everyone has to come to the temple in Jerusalem to worship, to make sure that you are worshiping correctly, worshiping to one God. Of course, they frame that differently here. So the politics of it all is very real. "Come now, I make this wager with my master. I'll give you 2,000 horses if you can produce riders to mount them. So how could you refuse anything, even to the deputy of one of my master's lesser servants, relying on Egypt for chariots and riders?" Yada, yada, yada. Now I want to point out that 3 Judahites who are talking to him replied, "Please speak to your servants in Aramaic. Speak to us in Aramaic, since we understand it. Do not speak to us in Judean, Hebrew, in the hearing of the people on the wall." So they're saying, let's have this conversation in Aramaic because we don't need to worry everyone in the city. But that is a fascinating point as we're thinking about integrity and hybridity. That is a point of saying that we are true to our culture, our language, and we don't want you and your men to start knowing it and using it. Clearly there's hybridity if the general of the Neo-Assyrian army knows Hebrew, right? So just something worth thinking about. Isaiah shows up and basically says when all else is out of control, we can win by controlling our integrity, by being true to our values. "There, maiden Zion despises you. She mocks you. Fair Jerusalem shakes her head at you, whom you have blasphemed and reviled, against whom you've made loud your voice and haughtily raised your eyes against the Holy One of Israel. Through your servants you've blasphemed the sovereign, because you thought, thanks to my vast charity, it is I who've climbed the highest mountains to the remotest parts of Lebanon and cut down the loftiest cedars, the choicest cypresses." So basically it says, hey, you, Assyrians, you think that you're so great because you can do all this? Well, I'm God and I can also do all of it and I'm just better than you anyway. And part of controlling our integrity, being true to our values, is knowing who we are, what's our place. So if you are going to be true to your values, then part of it is knowing that you're not God. Isaiah continues, The zeal of the God of hosts shall bring this to pass. Assuredly, thus said God concerning the king of Assyria. He will not enter, shoot an arrow, yada, yada, yada. He's not going to do anything to you. I will protect the city I will protect and save the city for my sake and the sake of my servant David. That night, an angel of God went out and struck down 185,000 in the Assyrian camp, and the following morning they were all dead corpses. So the king Sennacherib of Assyria broke camp and retreated and stayed in Nineveh, their capital. While he was worshiping in the temple of his god, Nishroch, he was struck down with the sword by his sons. They fled to the land of Arat, and there you have it. So I want to point out that that's no coincidence that he was struck down praying to his God, right? I mean, it's a pretty obvious message that, yeah, God of Israel wins. Your God sucks. Sorry. And then there's also, I think, this quote is very powerful from Isaiah. This is the sign for you. This year you eat what grows of itself, and next year what springs from that. And in the third year sow and reap and plant vineyards and eat their fruit. And the survivors of the house of Judah that have escaped shall renew its trunk below and produce boughs above. For a remnant shall come forth from Jerusalem, survivors from Mount Zion. I love that because it's saying that those of you who are rooted, it's a tree analogy, who are rooted and true to your values, continue to flourish. You'll continue to come back. If you've got strong roots, they can cut down the trunk and you'll grow back. And I like this. A remnant shall come forth from Jerusalem, survivors from Mount Zion, because it's a play on the, Kimitzion thing we talked about earlier. All right, finally, because I know you're done hearing my voice, a couple final thoughts. Neo-Babylonians will conquer the Neo-Assyrians, come to power in Judah. Neo-Babylonian 101, they're an empire, an alliance between the Chaldean and Median kings. In 625, before the Common Era, king filled two roles: restoration of specific sites of worship in cities and rule over while protecting specific people. Then comes good old Nebuchadnezzar II. Everyone say Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar. Great. He is a powerful king focused on expanding his empire at all costs. Meet Habakkuk. Habakkuk is the questioning prophet. He asks questions of God. So Habakkuk responds to the Babylonian Empire's tactics in Israel when they first arrive with questions of God. His first complaint is in 1, 2 through 4. Then God responds, then he complains again, God responds again, and he prays at the end. So I want to end on some quotes from Habakkuk. First of all, he is honest and never afraid to question God. We know that. That, my friends, is key to integrity, is even when it is not ideal, it's not pretty, it doesn't work towards your goals. If your value is that I believe in the future of Judah and that the Judahites have done the right thing, or I believe in God and I believe that my God is a compassionate God, then how could you not question God? Habakkuk says, the pronouncement made by the prophet Habakkuk, how long, O Eternal One, shall I cry out and will you not listen? Shall I shout to you violence and you not save? Why do you make me see iniquity? Why do you look upon wrong? Raiding and violence are before me. Strife continues and contention goes on. That is why decision fails and justice will never emerge. Judgment emerges deformed. So, God responds, look among the nations, observe well and be utterly astounded. For work is being brought in your days that you would not believe if I were told. For lo, I am raising up the Chaldeans, that fierce, impetuous nation, who cross the earth's wide space to seize homes not their own. They are terrible, dreadful, and make their own laws and rules. So when God responds, there are dreadful people coming, what would you do? Well, Habakkuk says, you, God, are everlasting. My holy God, you never die. Eternal One, you've made them a subject of contention. A rock, you've made them a cause for complaint. You whose eyes are too pure to look upon evil, who cannot countenance wrongdoing, Why do you countenance treachery and stand by idly while the one in the wrong devours the one in the right? Why the hell is this happening, God? Because you plundered many nations, all surviving people shall plunder you. You messed up a little bit. For crimes against human and wrongs against land, against cities and their inhabitants, you who have acquired gains to the detriment of your own house, who have destroyed many people in order to set your nest on high, you've plotted shame for your own and guilt against yourself. So, you thought you've done things right, and mostly you have. But you did something wrong, and it was something big. You did not follow the laws of war, and you've become greedy. So Habakkuk ends with the prayer. I heard my bowels quaked, my lips quivered at the sound. Rot entered into my bone and trembled where I stood, yet I wait calmly for the day of distress, for people to come to attack us. Though the fig tree does not bud, and no yield is on the vine, though the olive crop has failed, and the fields produce no grain, though sheep have vanished from the fold, and no cattle are in the pen, yet will I rejoice in God, exult in the God who delivers me. And the sovereign God is my strength, making my feet like the deer's, and letting me stride upon the heights for the leader with instrumental music. So I like that Habakkuk, I relate to Habakkuk in a lot of ways, part of which is he's kind of an eternal optimist. Even though God said, you've all majorly messed up, he's like, wow, that scares me. But, I will rejoice in God and exalt in God who delivers me, because my values state that I know that God is a God who is compassionate and saves. I know that I have lived by my values, and I've encouraged my people to live by those values of God. I think we've had integrity even at the moments that we've had low points, and I have hope. And that's part of the prophetic task. So from all of this, I think that's the last slide. Yes. Judah will be exiled to Babylon. Come back soon for that. And I hope you've learned a little bit about what makes a good prophet, the different ways prophets present their vision and bring about their hopes for a better, more perfected world under the rule of God, through partnership between God and human, as is described in the Aleinu prayer. I hope you've understood a little bit about how integrity factors into the prophets and into the way that Israel works within empire. I'll leave you with a quote from none other than the great prophet William Shakespeare. To thine own self be true. This is not only the message of Shakespeare, but also the message of the prophets. Empire threatens your ability to be true to yourself. Nevertheless, you must maintain your identity, maintain your values, have integrity, and stand up to survive. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.